Hey everybody, welcome to Manhattan Beach Studios. This is Mark and another edition of the Studio Life. Today I'm here surrounded by gear, lots of gear. We have a lot of live streaming going on, and at some point I'll walk you through this type of a setup. Normally we're in the broadcast van, so everything is tidier and clean, but here we actually have three separate video switches going on. We've got the Blackmagic. You can see the advanced panel down there. You've got a vMix box that's going to handle graphics and a lot of other fun things. And then over here, you've got the data video. Each one has unique advantages. And so there's a lot going on. And we're pretty excited. This is going to be a really fun couple days. And here we are sitting in the room. Maybe I'll be able to give a tour here shortly of what that looks like. But I wanted to spend some time today and talk about video and, to a little degree, audio delay.
Here we go!
Video delay is sort of our nightmare. It is the thing that throws everything a little bit out of sync. Audio tends to arrive first and picture a little bit later. And the question is, how much later does the picture arrive? That's one type of delay. The other type of delay is even if everything is in perfect sync, but you're showing it on a monitor, whether it's to talent or maybe a big monitor, IMAG, something like that, that's projection. And I wanted to take some time and talk about delay here on the Studio Life. So let's talk a little bit about what delay is, right? Delay happens for a lot of different reasons. One is that every piece of hardware has to process what it sees. And as technology has gotten better and better, that delay has been minimized. As cameras become more professional, it handles delay better. More consumer tends to add more delay. It's just the nature of what higher value components means. That's one type of delay. Delay also happens in the length of wires, of course. That has some resistance and some delay. It happens in processing time. So then it hits another piece of gear. So you have the camera that may have delay, and now you have a piece of hardware that may have a delay. Every capture card, for instance, has delay. And then the computer itself or the software has delay. And then, of course, the output has additional delay. So every time you move that video along from part to part to part, you add another fraction of delay. And gradually this adds up. The way we prevent delay is, number one, we are more direct in our routing, and we think through what are we trying to accomplish, and maybe we change the type of gear that we're using, or we change the type of routing that we're using. So here's an example of that. Would be something along the lines of Zoom. We may have a call where we have talent here in the room and they are broadcasting. We're broadcasting, let's say, via Zoom to a news network. The Zoom call itself will have delay, and then the program coming back from the news network will have even more delay. Now, there's not much we can do with Zoom. Luckily, it has a fairly limited amount of delay, and so we can manage that. The news network, who knows? It's like YouTube. You might have 10 seconds, 20 seconds, 30 seconds of delay in terms of the way they produce. So if you're reliant upon the program feed, you're going to go absolutely insane. You'll be looking at something that happened essentially 20 seconds or 30 seconds ago, or like I said, in a network context, it may even be longer than that. But when we sit someone down in the chair, we have to explain, hey, listen, what you're seeing is going to be a little bit behind what's actually happening. And so if that bothers you, there's not a lot we can do. But what we can do is we can set up another monitor that has a direct feed from the camera, let's say. So the only delay there is the camera delay, but you're looking at something that's essentially in real time. So we're managing the talent's perception of delay simply by giving them their own personal picture. We do the same thing in audio. Any audio delay is going to drive you absolutely nuts. Even if you don't hear the program feed, you're hearing yourself, which means you're hearing yourself echo against yourself. And we fix that with something called a mix minus. And this is not really the video where I was going to go into that too much, but that's another way of giving them their own audio first before the rest of the processing. So when something like that hits the board, we're giving them their own mix, which is the program feed minus the mix minus themselves, and then we're giving them themselves separately. So on this type of a board, if let's say the program are here is over here on channels, what is this, 9 and 10, but they're coming in on 3, we'll give them, we may give a separate headphone mix here on 11 and 12 that doesn't have them, and then we'll add them here. So the program includes them, the next mix does not include them. That's the mix minus themselves plus themselves direct. So you're hearing themselves both before they're processed, and then you're hearing the rest of it after. So that's the way we handle a lot of audio delay. But audio still comes in before video, and so that video delay is going to drive us a little nutty. So we talked about a couple of those causes. We've got hardware delays, we've got camera delays, we've got wiring delays, we've got capture card delays. What's another form of delay? And that might be NDI. If we're using video that's going around our studio over IP, over the network, that's going to have a delay. And there, once again, is not much we could do about it. We can minimize it as best we can. We cannot avoid it. So, and you can see that now. The camera we're looking at right now is an NDI camera. So if I were to raise my hand, you'll notice in the back screen over here that it's delayed. Okay, why is that delayed? Why is that happening? Well, that is vMix's delay. We're running this camera through vMix, and so now you're looking at the vMix delay and maybe some capture card and graphics card delay, because actually it's all happening through the capture card. And it's a very, very high-end capture card, so it's minimal delay, but it's still delay. But vMix is going to be the bulk of that delay. So NDI can be a brutal source. The worst thing we could do is, like, let's say we're using an NDI camera like we are right now, and we know there's going to be a delay. But what if we can simply record the video with an audio and then make the adjustment? We know exactly what that delay is. And we use one of those applications here. It is, what do we call it? What do they call it? They call it Catch and Sync. Yeah, Catch and Sync. So this is a $20 application from the iTunes store. Yes. It's about a $20 application through the iTunes store. And what it does is it allows you to video, and then you can slide the audio around until you've actually matched the... I just want to throw this out there, because let's say you do have audio and video that is actually out of sync. So this is true for any time you've got a camera with some delay and the audio is coming in, let's say, from direct mics. Now, this is a very common thing, especially with NDI. If you're not feeding the audio into the NDI camera, you're obviously going to have an out of sync thing. But what if you can aim a camera at a signal and then simply know what the offset is? You don't have to guess, instead of the clap test where you're guessing what that delay is and you keep on trying to adjust the delay. What if you're able to just film something? So we downloaded an application called Catch and Sync. I believe that's what it's called on the Apple Store. And we simply video something that's happening that has a video and an audio signal. Now, one of our favorite things is on YouTube. It's just a little bouncing dot and it makes a beep. And so let me show that over here. And what we do is we record we record this video directly into the application with the sound. We'll get a slider that tells us what that delay signal is. And all we have to do, once we've recorded that video coming through with the sound, we slide with our finger. It tells us how many milliseconds to adjust the delay, and we fix it. So it's a really cool way of proceeding. I don't like to sync up lips to speaking. I don't like to sync up claps. I really like to sync things up visually. And this little application, along with a video like that, makes all the difference. We simply aim our camera at that video and a microphone listening to the beep. We'll see the picture come in after the audio. We'll slide the audio, and we'll make our adjustment in the system. Fantastic, super easy. We love it. RTMP, and SRT delay. That's another area where there's going to be a delay in what we send around. Now, some of this is really good delay. We like this delay. SRT delay, secure reliable transport delay, is when we're sending video to another location. We're going from our location to their location, or vice versa. They're going from their location to us. If the video was sent in real time, designed to have zero delay, then any disruption in the internet, any disruption anywhere along the path is going to be lost. That packet is going, that data is going to be lost, and you're going to see that whether it's glitchiness or dropped frames or maybe even a whole dropped stream if there's enough of a problem. So what SRT does is it creates the ability to add a delay, and the more delay you add, the more the system buffers that video, and the more it buffers, the more it can handle errors. So by adding, whether it's 150 millisecond delay, which is basically a 15th of a second delay, or half a second or 1 second or 2 seconds or 5 seconds of delay, what you're doing is you're storing more data. And if there's a problem in the transport, it can go back and grab the data that got lost and resend it, all within the amount of time necessary in order to play it correctly. And that's why SRT is so dominant in the world of remotes. If we are trying to have a production remotely, but we want to switch those cameras internally, we'll add a delay so that we get the signals over here in good quality. And that delay doesn't really matter all that much. Now, we might be sending back a program feed. Now, that's going to be that delay plus any delay we're imposing in the other direction. And so you could see how this works. So those are some thoughts on what's happening here and why there is delay. We know a few different things. We know that this delay is going to happen along the way. We know that software switchers are going to have more delay than hardware switchers. We know all of this stuff. But we can switch over, and then we could talk about one of the other subtle parts of delay, which is frame sync. When you have 30 frames per second, let's just say 30 frames per second, that basically means that each frame is occupying a gap in time of about 30 milliseconds, a little bit more than 30 milliseconds. So if you add up all of these 30 milliseconds, 30 times 30 is 900. But if you take the 1,000 divided by, let's say, 29.97, now you know how many milliseconds each frame is occupying. But even with perfect time code, that's still 30 seconds or 30 milliseconds per one of those frames. And so it can start sending at any time, and the time code is still perfect. It's just that the frame is not in sync. And so what happens is that modern hardware, it will impose its own buffer on that video. It'll say, wait a second. We know that at any point during this 33 millisecond period of time, we might have that frame come in. So why don't we just wait until every one of the frames comes in and is perfect before we move to the next frame? So that means that any piece of hardware that has frame sync is going to have a minimum of 1 frame delay. Now, I actually think that in some cases this results in more than 1 frame delay. I think for some reason, without being an engineer or having an oscilloscope, I think if something comes in late on that, or if it comes in so much so that the hardware itself still has processing time. I know Blackmagic has said in some of the forums that it even runs only 10 lines of delay, but that's still delay, which means if something were to come in late, or maybe naturally, it may switch over to 2 frames of delay. By the time you're at 3 frames, the lips are out of sync. So even with the fastest hardware, even with many of these fast hardware switchers, you're still going to have delay. Some of our recorders will actually break if it sees frames out of sync. So for instance, our AJA Key Pro Ultra 4K recorder, when you're bringing in multiple SDI signals, it's trying to look at the first frame to try to determine its reference. But if 2, 3, or 4, or 2, 3, and 4 are not perfectly in sync with frame 1, it's going to try to move to the next frame maybe before that other frame on those cameras are in. So you're going to end up seeing either a split, a tear, where you're looking at the beginning of the new frame and the end of the old frame, or worse, you may lose the whole recording, though essentially the recording itself may break. And so it's very important that equipment that does not have frame sync is able to see that all the frames are together. And so that's where this thing called reference or Genlock comes in. And we happen to use this little device, which I can switch over. We use this little device. This is the AGA Gen 10. This is a generator that can send out, you can see 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, can send out 7 different signals of sync. This is I think a tri-level sync. And so what this is doing is this is able to tell any camera that has Genlock or reference when to send the beginning of each one of the frames. So it's not time, it's within the time code, but it's now making sure that the frames are being sent at the same time. But you'll notice that most professional hardware also has a reference. And so look at the back of your ATEMs. Look at the back of here's my data video. Look at the back of the recorder, or look at the capture card that I have here in my vMix box. They all have reference. And so you can send one of these reference tones, reference feeds, to each one of those. So now these pieces of hardware know not to wait. So they speed up the time. They're now all together. The frame comes from the camera at the same time the piece of hardware sees that frame, and it starts to move accordingly. Now, that does not mean that they're going to be imperfect. It may make the hardware one frame behind because it is still going to use its frame sync. And I know Blackmagic, again, according to its forums, still does. You cannot turn frame sync off, meaning even with this reference, you're one frame, but at least you're only one frame. The HyperDecks, same thing. They also will receive a reference signal, and that's really good because now you're telling that piece of hardware when to look for the beginning of the first frame. The great thing about the HyperDecks is that it can then send reference tone. It will actually create its own reference tone, and so you can daisy chain off of that. So that's what we do with our HyperDecks. If we're running 6 HyperDecks, the first HyperDeck may receive the sync tone as an external source, but then each one of the next ones down the line will receive the out. The out of each HyperDeck goes into the in, and then the out goes to the in, the out goes to the in. That's one way to do that without having to have extra ones of these SDI outs for sync. So all of that is really important for a variety of reasons. Now, this delay also gets stacked up as you go down the line. So for instance, you've got a delay at the camera, hopefully very nominal. Then you've got a delay at the switch. Then you've got a delay coming out of the switch, let's say into the graphics system. Now out of the graphics system, you may have a delay coming back to the monitors. And then you may have a delay going to IMAG. But the projector, the IMAG system, or the LED wall, that again has its own delay, or even if it has frame sync, it's going to wait and buffer further. So now what you're actually broadcasting is now potentially going to be really late, which is one of the reasons why we don't like to use software-based switchers when it comes to what we project. So even if we're using the software-based switcher for purposes of what we're producing as a final product, we may create a separate mix that goes to IMAG. And there are a lot of really cool ways to do this. For instance, we may split the signals. We may bring all those signals into the ATEM or a data video here, and then run a copy of those signals back out to vMix. And so we're able to switch whatever goes to IMAG separately. And so we may cut down the amount that goes out to IMAG, but we may be able to utilize the fact that there's very little delay on those. So it looks in sync to the audience or the sporting event or something like that. They're not waiting for the video to catch up, which can be really distracting and annoying. You don't necessarily lose the graphics. You can still feed the graphics back to the hardware switch. So even though there's a delay maybe on the graphics on a scoreboard, you don't care. Nobody cares if there's a few millisecond delay or even a third of a second or half a second delay on when the score changes from you scored a touchdown from 7 to 13, and so that's okay. So you can utilize all of your graphics tools. There are even other ways of feeding graphics. H2R has a wonderful graphics engine that can sit on a laptop by itself, very lightweight application, and can just feed. It's fantastic. So you don't necessarily lose anything, but you do have to get used to the idea that you may be on a hardware switch for purposes of what the audience is seeing. So really cool stuff. Unfortunately, we just have to deal with it. That's basically the bottom line. And so there's not a whole lot that can be done. It's something we have to manage. It's life, and it's okay. These things, they cost about $900. It's insane. But you can find them on eBay for like 40, 50, 60 bucks. Really cool. So this is not a prohibitive. The other thing that you can use is you can use something like the ambient Locket box. And what these do is they're wireless. The worst thing about this is, number one, you only have 7 signals, but you have to run SDIs back to the camera. So you've already worried about running an SDI to you. Now you got to run one back just for purposes of Genlock. I don't like doing that. Plus, maybe we're using wireless cameras that day and we don't want to use SDIs at all. Maybe we're also running program feeds or something like that. Now we got to go 3 SDIs per camera. It's crazy. The great thing about the ambient Locket is that you can not only feed wireless timecode, but you can also feed wireless Genlock. And so you're able to get away without having as much of a burden on your wiring structure. So that works really well. We love those. We love anything wireless. A lot of the time we'll use free run anyway for purposes of timecode. If we jam a couple times a day, it's fine. But for Genlock, we like to have something that's seeing, because it's 30 times more susceptible to an error. You can drift a long way before you go out of frame, before you lose sync on timecode. You've got a lot of buffer. You have 33 milliseconds to use. But you have 1 millisecond to lose, or even less than 1 millisecond to lose when it comes to frame sync. So having something that's constantly talking to the camera is actually a big deal. Now, I want to apologize. I am not an engineer. This stuff drives me nuts. I plug this stuff in, and I don't even know if it works. But I see that the equipment reacts to it. Some of my cameras will have a little symbol on there that says it's seeing an external sync. It's very hard to detect. But when I know that my recorders don't go down, I know that my delay doesn't seem as long, I know that Genlock is really working for me. So that's another way of handling the delay process. I hope this is helpful. And please feel free to leave a comment, question, thought, idea. If you've got ideas, things you want to talk about, don't hesitate. We're always here, and we're always producing, and we love this stuff. So anyway, have a great day.